Making Hovey's Knives of China Aspen Leaf Skinner. William Hovey Smith, 2016. I'm Hovey Smith, and I'm the author of Backyard Deer Hunting and also the owner and founder of a new company, Hovey's Knives of China. And here is one of our newest creations.
This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And I'm also the owner of a new company, Hovey's Knives of China. And we're in my shop and we're working on some of our knives right now. And in particular, we're working on the Aspen Leaf Skinner. This is a small skinning knife, and as you see, it has a quite different shaped blade. And the interesting thing about this knife that makes it unique is its unusually long grip here, as well as it being sharp on both edges. So when you skin, you actually go this way. Now, to get to the point where we are now, we've taken flat stainless steel stock, and we've actually ground this profile on this blade, thinned the blade, and initially sharpened it on both edges. And at this stage we're at now, this knife has been heat treated. So now what we're ready to do is polish it. This is a color from heat treating to a bright finish. We've already drilled it while it was soft steel, put the pins in it, and finished grinding the grip. Now the grip we're going to use was actually intended for another knife. This is cherry. It was cut from a log from Billy Joe Rubidoux place. Cherry is a hard wood, but it's also somewhat brittle. And as this knife may have occasional impact use, that is actually being pounded on, that is deleterious. And I had a small crack here, which I repaired with glue, but I think a better solution is actually to use pecan wood, a member of the hickory family, and a tougher wood for the handle of that rib splitter. So rather than attempt to work with this, I'm going to go ahead and use these blanks I've already prepared and put them on my leaf skinner. To show you something of the polishing steps, we've started with the Scotch-Brite wheel over here. And you can see that we've got it to a more nearly bright finish here compared to this dull, which will be covered by the grips. And we're going to do just a little more here on this side right there, and then take it to this finer grit on this wheel. Be very careful not to catch this edge or it'll tend to want to swing it out of the hand. Considering that we started this project with a piece of Billy Joe Rubidoux cemetery wood like this, and have reduced it down to a billet, we are now getting more and more precise about our cutting and our shape. I've sketched out the knife handle on the blanks I've made, and you can see where this line is where we actually want to cut it off here. And this, by doing this, I'm able to sort of see into the wood a little bit, look at both sides, and decide exactly where I want to cut these blanks to avoid any splits or wormholes or other points of weakness in the wood. We're going to drill our pilot holes into the wood now. So yeah, that's clearing the hole. pressed completely through. So we're going to put an index pin in here now just to hold it. I have my two slave pins in now. These are just cut off pieces of wooden nails. And now that I've cut them, I'll just put them in a little tray and save them for the next time I drill pinholes. Now we play a game of musical chairs to drill through all three pieces here. Now that we have our holes drilled in the scales, we're going to cut our pins with a hacksaw and then set and glue them. The last thing a knife maker wants to do is to bust up his scales while he's setting his pins. And that's the reason for the drill press here. So we are going to glue up our blocks here. We already have the size set. We have the orientation of the knife established, so we know we're doing that. All right. We now have our skinning knife roughly profiled. The handle is unusual in that it has a bulbous portion here toward the palm of the hand, and this is purposefully flat. Every other knife in the world just about has a round top. Why? No particular reason, except it's always been so. My knife grip is coming along well, but one problem on the bottom here is this is the thickness I want for the bottom, yet the steel is down somewhat lower within the wooden grip. So what I'm going to do is take this very thin piece of wood, and this is actually from the same blank that this was cut from, and make a long piece here, fit it to the interior of this channel, glue it in, and then finish it and polish it with the rest of the grip. We've just finished inserting this long sliver of thin wood down into the stock on a bed of shoe goo. Well, our glue is well set now. So we're using our small utility knife to just slowly carve away the edges here. I want to get it down to close to the wood. Just take shavings off very, very slowly, because if I put it on the sander too soon, this wood might fracture. One thing a skinning knife needs if you're going to work in the inside of a carcass, particularly a big one like a moose, is a lanyard around the wrist. So if you drop the knife, you don't have to fish around in a great big huge animal to try to find it again and risk cutting yourself on the point when you do. So we're going to drill a lanyard hole. Now I've already pre-drilled a hole in the steel. As you can see, the hole was plenty big enough, but I just had the bad luck to miss it by drilling a little too far forward toward the point. But of course I cannot see it now. So this is by guess and by God. And I think we're in the position for it. So we're going to start up the drill and proceed slowly. No, we were not successful. It hit on the steel and bound. Not good. Our first attempt was not successful. So the bit caught on a piece of the steel, took off at an angle, and ultimately broke. So the approach we're going to use now is to use this larger bit and go down straight till we hit the steel, then slow down the speed, slow down the penetration, drill this new larger hole through the steel and then through the other side. In the meantime, we have it mounted and clamped on this more stable vise. I'm going to secure it down as stable as it can be. So hopefully we'll be able to make it through this time. We have some grievous issues. In fact, the glue bond did break. And this pin, as you see, is starting to just fall of its own weight out of the piece under the vibration. But this part of the scales are still very, very firmly attached. If I try to remove these pins now, I'll probably break these scales. So I don't want to do that. I could heat the entire blade, but if I do that, I disturb the temper of the blade. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue drilling and see what results from that. It is cutting the steel, but because this steel has now been hardened, it is slow going, and it is going to generate enough heat. I suspect what's going to happen is this entire blade from here up is going to get warm enough that I can then safely remove these pins and then actually rebuild the knife. The heat from the drilling has largely delaminated the knife. Now I can safely remove the pins without getting the scales if I do it in a hurry. Well, I did manage to remove the top scale without breaking it. So now we have it here. Now this is still indexed and held in the work. So what I'm going to do is actually re-drill the hole that's already here. So they may not line up exactly. You can see how far I was off. But now this is much easier done. Okay, we're all the way through now. Look, we wound up breaking out a good piece of our good wood here too. What are we going to do? We have one scale that's perfectly good and it's separated. Now we have another with this sort of divot broken out. Now there are several alternatives at this stage. Now what any professional knife maker would do would say, okay, this handle is scrap. You scale it off, you take it off the steel completely, and you start all over and you make a whole new grip. Could do that. The Billy Joe Rubidoux solution is to put a patch on it. Now this was done in Appalachia many times, mostly on guns, sometimes on knives, when something like this happened. This is pecan wood. This is a sound section of wood right here. What I'm going to do is to take this part of the handle off. Just cut a square out. Remove the damaged portion. Cut a slab of this that's solid wood. Glue and pin it to the remainder of the scale and drill it. We now have it where our holes line up and everything is fairly solid. So what we're going to do is put 2 brass pins and glue. And this time we're going to use super glue to bond these 2 pieces together. And once we do that, then we'll proceed to cut off this larger piece and actually grind it to the shape of the grip. Sometimes a little wood dust is just what you need. We have this gap between these 2 pieces, so we're going to mix up some Maxicure super glue here with some dust, as well as put it here and here to fill these gaps, and a little bit right around here when we set this pin. Last time we glued and set the pins with the but I'm going to tap the pins in as gently as possible. Get a good bond all the way down.
The patch was successful. Now the details of cutting and fitting this patch is going to be in another video, patching knife scales. Sometimes you take a risk and it doesn't pay off. Well, yeah, that does happen. But you learn something and I learned something.
We have our patch successfully applied to our knife blade here, and have also done sanding on it and put its first coat of finish. And what I'm using is this Minwax wood finish here, and this is a natural stain, but it does give some darkening to the wood, but it's mild compared to a walnut stain or some others. What we're also going to do is attempt to dress up this hole on the inside. As you saw, this steel is now hardened, so it cannot be drilled very successfully. So we're going to use these grinding bits, which are adaptations to the Dremel tool, and see if we can freshen out this hole and make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing. Because now when you look at it, you see this lump of steel, and plus it's offset. There's nothing we can do with the offset, but we can certainly try to grind away the steel a little bit. And we have an appropriate point right here, which is abrasive compound, to do it. See? Although we completely used up one accessory tool in the process, we did manage to get our hole freshened out. So we go to the belt sander now, and we actually do the final edging on the blade. Now during the previous process of fitting the handles, inadvertently we actually hit this portion of the blade with the grinding stone, which of course destroyed the edge. Plus, the process of tempering itself tends to dull the edge a little bit. So we're going to freshen up the edge with this fine belt here. This is the finest belt we have, and the one we also use to shape the grips. Now we're starting to really get there. There's still one little rough spot right there. We now have the edges on our knives, and what we're going to do now is to strop the blade. We're actually going to turn this belt over and use the back side to effect the polish. Now instead of using the abrasive side of the belt, we're using the back side of the belt. And what this does is takes the raised edges and makes the blade edge cut smooth. This also removes any varnish or anything else that might have gotten on the blade. Through this series of videos, we have made and tested the most recent of our Billy Joe Rubidoux series of blades made from found materials. And this is our Aspen leaf skinner. Now this skinner is going to be made as a regular production knife from Hovey's Knives of China. But this is our Billy Joe version. Now, we've edged it, and the only thing that's left to do is to test it. We know that we harden the steel, both by accident and by design. We have tested it. It is very resistant to drilling. It is very resistant to abrasion. So yeah, this is hard stuff once we treat it in the furnace. So we have also put something of an edge on it. Will it cut? Yes, it will cut. Now I'll probably take this knife and put it on a stone and actually refine the edge even more than it is now. But for the moment, yeah, does good. So the next thing I will do with this knife is go out today and maybe shoot a deer and skin it. Yeah. But now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe. Goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.
This is the logo of Hovey's Knives of China with some of our innovative designs. And here are some of our more than 15 different patterns of knives, and they're growing in number every day. And here are some of my outdoor books, all of which have chapters on knives. And these books include extreme muzzleloading, backyard deer hunting, crossbow hunting, as well as practical bow fishing. Knife making using heritage materials carries added risk. Now, I have other videos about making knives, and we'll have one coming making paring knives from a much rusted piece of lawn implementaria. For more information on the Billy Joe and Hovey's Knives of China series, you can go to the website below. For information on my books, products, and more than 550 videos, you can go to my website, www.hoveysmith.com. Good hunting and good eating from the outdoors. Goodbye, and God bless.